Hello YouTube, hello people, and today's study in my series on how to follow Jesus Christ is on the results of baptism in the Holy Spirit. So this is different to water baptism, and I said before in my previous videos you have to get the baptism in the Holy Spirit, and now I'm going to explain it to you. So the baptism in the Holy Spirit is a gift from heaven. The believer who receives this gift is given supernatural power to witness and serve as a disciple of Jesus, and any disciple who receives it, anyone who follows Jesus Christ, can have it. Believers who receive this gift are marked by their ability to speak or pray in a language that is unknown to them. This mark or gift is given by the Holy Spirit. This is why we sometimes call praying in the Holy Spirit. The Bible also calls it speaking in other tongues. Acts chapter 2 verse 4. In the New Testament church, this experience was considered normal for all believers. By praying in this language, the Christian builds up his own spiritual life and puts himself in direct and constant communication with God. This opens a heavenly gateway that enables both gifts and the fruits of the Holy Spirit to be worked out in the life of a believer. So the first question is, what happened to the disciples on the day of Pentecost, called Shavuot in Hebrew, when they were all filled with the Holy Spirit? Acts chapter 2 verse 4 says they started speaking in other tongues, so they started speaking in other languages. Question 2 says, who preached to the people of Samaria to believe in Jesus as a Messiah? Acts chapter 8 verse 12 suggests that it was Philip. Question 3 says, when Peter and John came to Samaria, when they did pray for Christians there. When Peter and John came down to Samaria, what did they pray for the Christians there to receive? Acts chapter 8 verse 15 suggests to receive the Holy Spirit. So Peter and John prayed for the Christians down in Samaria to receive the Holy Spirit. Question 4 says, how did the Christians at Samaria receive the Holy Spirit? So Acts chapter 8 verse 17 says, Peter and John put their hands on them. So when you ask for the baptism of the Holy Spirit, they need to put their hands on you, and then you'll receive it. Question 5 says, how did Saul of Tarsus, or Paul, receive the Holy Spirit? Acts chapter 9 verse 17 says, Ananias laid his hands on him. Question 6 says, what happened to all who heard Peter preaching in the house of Cornelius? Acts chapter 10 verse 44 suggests the Holy Spirit fell on them, so they received Peter's message, and they received the baptism of the Holy Spirit. Question 7. How did Peter and his friends know that everyone in the house of Cornelius had received the Holy Spirit? Acts chapter 10 verses 45 to 46 suggests they started speaking in tongues and praising God. So when it says speaking in tongues, they were speaking the very language of God, and they were praising God, so they were acknowledging him for who he was as God. Question 8. What question did Paul ask the disciples at Ephesus? Acts chapter 19 verse 2 says, did you receive the Holy Spirit? So that's a question that he asked. Question 9. When did these disciples at Ephesus receive the Holy Spirit? Acts chapter 19 verse 6 suggests when Paul laid his hands on them. So again, you have to have people to lay hands on you to receive the baptism of the Holy Spirit. Question 10. What happened after the Holy Spirit came on these disciples? Acts chapter 19 verse 6. So they started speaking in tongues and prophesied. So it's different for each person, but the one thing that remains is they start speaking the very language of God, which is tongues, and some might start prophesying, some might do other things. Depends on how the Holy Spirit works in them. Question 11. How much did Paul say that he himself spoke in tongues? 1 Corinthians chapter 14 verse 18 say more than all of you, so that's what he said. Question 12. List 3 things that a Christian does when he speaks in an unknown tongue. 1 Corinthians chapter 14 verse 2 and 4 says number 1, start speaking to God, so that's the tongues bit there. Number 2, start speaking mysteries, so start speaking stuff that God reveals to them and that is not understood by humanity alone, by their own strength. Question 3, they start prophesying about themselves, so they start speaking things that God has revealed to them that will come to pass in the future, in their lives. Question 13, if a Christian prays in an unknown tongue, what part of him is then praying? 1 Corinthians chapter 14 verse 14 is their spirit. So your spirit starts speaking, but your soul doesn't speak because you're made up. You're a triunion being. There's your body, then there's your soul, which is like your mind, your intellect, your emotions, and your will. And then there's your spirit, so that's like the life of God being breathed into you and taken form in. So your body, what you see, that is what your spirit looks like. Question 14. How did Jesus say that true worshippers should worship God? John chapter 4 verse 23 and 24, in spirit and in truth. So when it means in spirit, so your spirit starts to communicate with God, and in truth it means you start to believe what you know what you're speaking is true. Question 15. How does Jude exhort Christians to build themselves up in their faith? Jude verse 20 says, pray in the Holy Spirit, so that's praying in tongues, which is the same as speaking in tongues basically. Question 16. When a Christian speaks in an unknown tongue, what may he pray for next? 1 Corinthians chapter 14 verse 13 is pray for the power of interpretation. So when you start speaking in tongues, you should then start to pray for the power of interpreting what you're saying in the language of the Holy Spirit, so then you know what you're speaking. Otherwise then it's useless to you if you don't know what you're speaking. Question 17. In a public meeting when there's no interpreter, how may a Christian speak in an unknown tongue? 1 Corinthians chapter 14 verse 28 is to speak to themselves and to God. So when you're in a church or in a public place, if you start speaking in tongues, it should only be between you and God. Question 18. Did Paul say that he wished that all Christians spoke in tongues? 1 Corinthians chapter 14 verse 5 suggests yes. So all Christians should have the ability to speak in tongues, and all you have to do is ask someone who already has a Holy Spirit in them to pray upon you so that they have the baptism of the Holy Spirit. Question 19. How many Christians did Paul say may prophesy? 1 Corinthians chapter 14 verse 31 suggests all. So all Christians should have, when they start speaking, when they have the baptism of the Holy Spirit, they'll be able to speak in tongues and they'll be able to prophesy over their own lives. Question 20. Should Christians be ignorant about spiritual gifts? 1 Corinthians chapter 12 verse 21 is no. So depending on your destiny, God gives you certain spiritual gifts to go along with that. So when you know your destiny, you kind of know what spiritual gifts will go with that. So, question 21. List the 9 gifts of the Spirit. 1 Corinthians chapter 12 verse 8 to 10. So the spiritual gifts are wisdom, knowledge. So knowledge is knowing stuff, and wisdom is how to apply that knowledge in real life. And then there's faith, which is like it's separate to the faith of God. It's like an extreme amount of faith, and you have faith in like anything, no matter what. And then there's gifts of healing, so the ability to heal, along with a normal Christian be able to heal. And then there's working miracles, and then there's prophecy, which is like it's different to the prophecy that would normally come through speaking tongues. So anyway, I'm going to split the videos here and I'll come back to you in a sec. Bye.